The Matrix was first released back in 1999, and somehow its visual effects are still astonishing to this day. Although this wouldn't be possible without the help of CGI, which the film really utilized, especially considering when it came out. In today's video, we're going to take a look at behind the scenes of The Matrix without CGI. Released over 20 years ago in 1999, The Matrix was one of, and arguably still is, one of the most entertaining and impressive examples of the action genre. Though what makes it not like any other action film is its many innovations. It used cutting-edge technology and techniques, and in the end, introduced new concepts and ideas that people had never seen before in a big-budget R-rated action movie. In fact, some may say that The Matrix marked and created a new era in filmmaking, in which filmmakers utilized improving technology in order to achieve their creative visions and make something audiences would love. It changed many people's views on movies and combined two things nobody had really thought of putting together yet: a frantic action-style movie that also involved mind-bending philosophy. Of course, the film wouldn't have been able to do what it did without the help of CGI. Lucky for them, advances in computer technology throughout the 90s made CGI possible. It opened the door to endless possibilities for filmmakers and boosted the entertainment value for viewers. For example, The Matrix was the first film to sell 1 million copies on DVD home release. Part of the reason it did so well with DVD was because it had enhanced the quality of the video and allowed for a better sight at the film's stunning special effects. Speaking of, the first special effect in The Matrix we're going to discuss is known as bullet time. This effect was used a few times throughout the movie, but the most notable time was right at the beginning. The very famous sequence is a fight scene between Neo and tons of clones of Agent Smith. According to the special effects supervisor John Gaeta, they wanted to, quote, create a ballet that could never be staged in real life. The directors, Larry and Andy Wachowski, wanted to emulate the stylization found in Japanese animation. Gaeta said, adding, "When we created weather, fire, and smoke, we wanted it to move not realistically, but impressionistically." A number of different techniques were used in order to depict Neo and the multiplying Agent Smiths exactly how they wanted to. During the more realistic one-on-one fight scenes, actors Keanu Reeves and Hugo Weaving portrayed themselves, and when multiple Smith clones attacked at once, Weaving was photographed many different times at different locations. An interesting fact about this is that there were actually 120 still cameras that were continuously taking photos in succession. Of course, looking at it today, the playback rate for a film is typically 24 frames per second. The photos that were captured by the cameras for the film would only last 5. However, making it all work in the end, the final version of the scene is a lot slower and lasts about 10 seconds, seeming to speed up and slow down in certain places, which makes it appear much smoother. Speaking on the technicality of the movie per se, when the action became a bit dangerous for the actors, stunt doubles were put in. If the stuntman was far away from the camera, he could simply dress like an agent, and if the action was closer up, the stuntman's head was digitally replaced to be a virtual Smith, taking it a step further. When the action in the scenes became unrealistic, for example, when Neo swings around a pole at an extreme fast speed to attack the Smith clones, everything in the scene gets created by the computer. This includes the actors, camera movement, sets, and lighting. To create realistic computer-created humans, ESC researchers for The Matrix made sure to pay close attention to not only facial movement and configuration, but also to hair, body, and clothing. To duplicate human faces, the actors were filmed from multiple different angles using 5 high-definition video cameras. The recorded facial expressions were, of course, then added to the bodies of the computer-created characters. Along with this, the ESC researchers also created a system that imitated hair movement. Clumps of hair were designed to move according to complex algorithms and even casted the appropriate shadows when they moved back and forth. In addition to using complex algorithms, The Matrix also created a 3-dimensional computer-generated simulation of the scenes. Generating this before even setting up the cameras then gave the crew everything they needed to know on how to set up the shot, such as where to place the cameras, what frame rate to shoot at, and how far apart they should space each camera. However, even with all of this, there were still some difficulties, some of which included getting the correct focus adjustments, which needed to gradually change as the camera came closer to objects, so they had to adjust some frames and slightly warp other ones during post-production to smooth things out. Another aspect they had to focus on was adjusting and controlling the speed of the cameras. An interesting fact some may not know is that the scene of the camera moving around Neo is actually just an illusion that was created by placing one camera after another in a circle, having them take photos continuously at a constant interval. By increasing the speed and the space in between the cameras, it would allow for it to travel further, but still in the same amount of photos. So to speed sections up, they would set the cameras farther apart, and to slow them down, they would pack them closer together. The final step, of course, was to make the shots smoother and slower. In order to do so, they used a process which digitally created additional artificial frames based off an approximation between each real frame that existed. This process is known as interpolation, and is what led to the smoothness and extra slow motion of the scene, while also making the shot last twice as long. After this, they then tracked the whole shot to a 360-degree computer-generated environment by using real on-location photos for the texture. The only problem, one that some may not have never even realized, was that during this shot, when they're dodging bullets, Neo somehow makes his guns disappear. He throws them on the floor, and they disappear. But then somehow, they're back again. Another scene where CGI was partially used was when the agents planted a bug inside of Neo. The scenes when the bug is placed on Neo's stomach are made with CGI. But for the shots, such as when we see the bug moving its tail around right before it enters, and later on, when the bug moves around under his skin, an animatronic torso was used instead. One of the reasons why most of the effects in this movie still look convincing in today's world is mainly thanks to the well-made decisions of when to use CGI or other post-production techniques, and when to use realistic effects. A good example of this is when Neo goes to see the Oracle and looks through the car window. Rather than using a green screen or editing, they instead use some of what's called rear projection, which is when you project pre-recorded footage of the moving background on a canvas outside of the car, which is stationary. This was done purposefully to give the Matrix a sense of vagueness to complement Neo, now seeing the Matrix as something that is not real. In addition to the previous mentions, the shootout scene in the lobby was yet another result of amazing use of realistic effects, pyrotechnics, wire work, and well-choreographed gun work. And as if it weren't great enough already, to top it all off, they blew up the entire place, though it was actually only a scale model of the set, scaled down and upside down in order to get the flames to appear as though they were spreading along the lobby floor. The elevator door was then added in post-production, creating a nice blend between CGI and practical effects. Another example of this great blend between CGI and realistic effects was the helicopter crash scene. Interestingly enough, this was made up of multiple plates or layers that were all tied together with the help from some CGI. The way that it was put together was that first a stunt guy was pulled along the rooftop on location. Next, Trinity, played by Carrie-Anne Moss, was in the chopper with a CGI background. Then they took a shot of a hollow rope with a squib going offside. And interesting fact, if you look carefully, you can actually see the gunfire before the squib explodes. Next, Trinity is placed in front of a green screen and things start to get a little more layered. Then the model chopper and CGI background, with some post-production camera wobble, moves back to the multi-layered shot. To put it all together, it creates a great mix of CGI and practical pyrotechnics with more camera wobble on the final composite. To sum it all up, the scene includes a practical effects explosion plate on top of the CGI building with more camera wobble and a plate of Trinity swinging in front of a glass sheet on top. Then, finally, it goes back to the previous multi-layered shot with the post-production camera wobble, finishing with Trinity facing the other way round in front of the glass and a green screen. With that said, that's going to wrap up this video. Thanks for watching.